Ever pondered why so many marriages eventually lose their luster? Why do men start to feel irritated or estranged from the lady they once loved after years of devotion? And why can couples feel disconnected and unfulfilled as the ardor and adoration that once drove the partnership seem to wane into a routine? You're at the right place if you've ever felt these emotions, or if you're just interested in the dynamics that go unnoticed in committed partnerships. We're delving deeply into a crucial topic that impacts many marriages in this video: how respect, appreciation, and emotional ties can be undermined by regularity and stagnation. We'll look at why it's more common than we'd like to acknowledge that relationships that begin with adventure and discovery frequently descend into a cycle of boredom. That's not all, though. You will know how to stop this deterioration and rekindle the love and respect in your relationship by the end of this video. We'll talk about how to overcome recurring tendencies, how to maintain admiration, and why personal development, both individually and as a couple, is essential to a happy and long-lasting marriage. Keep watching, because this video will offer insightful advice on how both couples may keep pushing themselves, encouraging one another, and developing as a couple, not just for the purpose of the marriage, but also for their own sense of fulfillment. Make sure to watch through to the finish if you're prepared to discover the keys to maintaining a healthy and fulfilling relationship. To ensure that you don't miss any videos, I advise everyone who isn't already subscribed to do so and turn on the notification bell. I really appreciate your support, and if you liked and shared this movie, you can help me disseminate the important lessons even more. Please leave a comment if you find the content of this video interesting. If not, kindly leave a 0 in the comment section so that I may learn how to make better videos for you. Let's get started. Let's examine this matter more closely and intimately. Predictability is one of the most silent killers of admiration in a relationship. The air between two people is electrified in the beginning by this indisputable sensation. It's all brand new, exciting, and full of possibilities. Every discussion is like revealing a fresh and fascinating enigma. Whether it's their peculiarities, their deepest passions, their wildest dreams, or even their smallest habits, you're always learning new things about your partner. This never-ending quest for knowledge and understanding is what fuels the admiration. In this stage, you can't help but admire how complex, distinctive, and endlessly intriguing your spouse is. There's an addictive energy in the unknown. However, time has a way of changing everything. Over time, the once wonderful vitality progressively disappears into the mundane. Before you realize it, you're stuck in a pattern as life finds its groove. Predictability replaces the previously exhilarating novelty. You get up, go to work, finish your tasks, return home, eat, sleep, and so on. And in the middle of all of that, something sneaky occurs. Relationships may begin to feel more like duties than emotional journeys, when once exciting things become regular. The risk here is that the ability to perceive one another as vibrant individuals will also diminish as the spark disappears. Couples stop learning new things about one another. One of the most devastating and emotionally draining changes that may occur in a relationship is when they begin to take each other for granted. Humans are psychologically predisposed to lose interest in items that become a permanent part of their lives. We fail to appreciate what we've already achieved and take for granted what we believe we have. Relationships also lose value over time, in addition to material belongings and professional professions. How many times have we heard of a husband who previously loved his wife for her brilliance, humor, and enthusiasm, but who has become oblivious to those same attributes after years of viewing her in the same way every day? Even while he still loves her, the admiration, that strong emotion that feeds passion and respect, begins to ebb and flow like sand. Let's not fool ourselves. Women experience the same thing. Their husbands still care about them. But familiarity can cause emotional blindness. Instead of being the crescendo of inspiration that it once was, what once inspired awe turns into background noise, a distant hum. Although this psychological reality is heartbreaking, many couples are unable to face it. Frustration enters like an unwelcome visitor as adoration wanes. The relationship begins to change when a guy no longer views his wife as someone who pushes him, encourages him, and thrills him. He starts to resent her without even recognizing it. A relationship that was once greatly valued can gradually become emotionally taxing. The vitality that had characterized their partnership may be diminished to a drab duty. Emotional withdrawal occurs at this point. Conversations become shallow, and emotional connection starts to wane. In actuality, emotional distance takes time to develop. Slowly it seeps in through small communication gaps that eventually get bigger. The thing is this: a person's marriage changing for the worse is not the threat. It's that the partnership ceases to change. Like everything else in life, relationships require ongoing development. And I'm not only talking about the development that comes with running a household or raising kids. I'm referring to emotional development, intellectual curiosity, and personal growth. In the absence of this, a relationship stalls, and stalling stifles admiration. I know that both partners need to keep changing if they want their relationship to succeed and last. For their own fulfillment, as well as the sake of the partnership, they must support one another's growth. A pair should push one another to be better, encourage one another, and challenge one another. And no, I'm not advocating for extreme growth. Sometimes the modifications are minor. Sometimes it's just learning something new, trying new things together, or even just being willing to view each other from various perspectives. The key is to view your partner as more than a person who plays a part in your life. It's about continuing to be curious, wanting to learn more, connecting with someone more deeply, and rediscovering the person you're with. This natural development is what makes the early phases of a relationship so wonderful. Both parties are working together to share, learn, and create something. It involves establishing a base that is both flexible and feels sturdy. That sense of evolution ought to persist as you advance. Whether it's by common experiences, individual successes, or just developing as a couple, it ought to be a continuous process. This type of development, this strengthening of the tie, sustains adoration. And while admiration endures, so does the relationship. Regretfully, far too many people make the mistake of only keeping things as they are. They cease to develop as people, and their relationship ceases to be a place where they flourish and instead becomes a means of survival. The problem is this: without development, admiration wanes, and the relationship's essence also vanishes. We stop respecting what we believe to be true. We overlook the fact that showing respect requires more than just giving it. We continually remind ourselves of the reasons we fell in love in the first place as we maintain and cultivate it. Respect is never given without effort. It needs to be gained consistently via hard work, curiosity, and a readiness to change. There is something genuinely enchanting about a man's admiration for his wife at the beginning of a relationship. He is amazed by her drive, inventiveness, and intense love for the things she cherishes. She seems like an amazing force in those early years, always changing, pushing herself, and sustaining the vibrancy of her environment. However, as time goes on and life becomes more usual, something changes. Her once bright spark, her motivation, and her desire to develop start to dim. She loses herself in the routine of her daily obligations, both minor and major. The monotony of getting through the day begins to take the place of the enthusiasm she once carried so readily. If you're still watching this video and finding these teachings helpful, please let me know by leaving a comment below. Additionally, her husband can start to view her differently when she quits chasing the things that used to make her pulse race. As someone who has contentedly adapted to a predictable, everyday life, rather than as the lady he fell in love with. As his admiration wanes, he starts to question where that woman went, rather than gazing at her with the same amazement. Unfortunately, this loss of admiration isn't a one-sided phenomenon. Men can experience the same thing. A guy may lose the respect of his wife if he stops stretching his boundaries, making new goals, or challenging himself. He's not a horrible person, mind you. He just stopped developing into a better version of himself and stopped growing, and the respect that used to feel so natural ends when growth stops. Here's the problem, though. It takes more than one person not meeting the other's standards for a relationship to lose admiration. It's not about assigning blame or pointing fingers. It's about both people stopping to support their own development and investing in the exact traits that used to make them so vibrant and motivating to each other. Being together is never enough in a relationship. It's about improving as a team. Partners stop supporting one another when they both stop trying to be the best versions of themselves. The relationship becomes into a static, nearly mechanical arrangement rather than a collaboration in which two individuals support, question, and promote one another's dreams. Every individual fits into a predetermined function, carrying out tasks instead of inspiring passion. And frustration is bred by that stagnation. Silent, slithering, all-consuming annoyance. It develops into resentment, gradually and undetectably. And when that occurs, both spouses are merely clinging to one another as if the relationship's foundation has crumbled. Unfortunately, a lot of couples think that love will be sufficient to sustain their union and help them get through life's challenges. The unpleasant reality, however, is that love without development is merely a cozy but ultimately meaningless existence. A partnership cannot last forever on love alone. Without development, love turns into a stagnant pool that gets progressively murkier. Love is not enough for relationships. They must be investigated, they require inquiry, they must be changed. The true tragedy occurs when two people cease pushing one another to grow and learning from one another. Everything else falls into place after that spark of creativity from both parties fades. The discussions begin to seem monotonous. The once exciting, thrilling link becomes more like a worn-out habit, and the moments of closeness feel fleeting. The relationship no longer feels like a partnership that energizes them both, but rather like a duty, something they must do, rather than something that makes them happy. Although it's silent, the erosion is real, and that connection deteriorates into a shadow of its former glory in the absence of the vitality that results from advancement on both sides. Both partners need to continue working on their personal growth in order to sustain adoration. It goes far beyond simply making ends meet. It has to do with passion. Curiosity is the key. It's about establishing objectives and pursuing aspirations, even if doing so results in setbacks. It takes more than just keeping in touch to have a successful relationship. It's about growing together, encouraging one another's development, and being each other's strongest supporter. Partners run the risk of gradually becoming emotionally and physically estranged if one or both of them cease developing and striving for more. You can't coast through a relationship. Together we must actively work to develop it day by day. Deep regard, fire, and a genuine sense of fulfillment are all impossible without growth. The burden of responsibility unavoidably grows as a marriage develops. The roles that men and women play are frequently influenced by the demands of family life, financial constraints, and societal expectations. Early on, they seem to be working toward a common goal and creating something unique together. However, with marriage, these responsibilities may grow out of balance, making one spouse feel overburdened and undervalued. The burden of being the breadwinner can become too much for many guys. Men frequently experience intense psychological pressure to provide for their families, regardless of whether both partners make financial contributions. It's simple for people to feel caught in a vicious cycle where their identity is determined only by their work and their capacity to support others. As the demands of their jobs increase and their financial obligations grow. To live up to these expectations, they give up their own hobbies, passions, and even their health. They assure themselves that they are carrying out their duties as the family's provider and that they are doing everything for them. However, they could secretly start to feel invisible, as though their work is being ignored. They could feel as if they are invisible, that their efforts and sacrifices go unappreciated. However, women frequently bear the relationship's emotional and household responsibilities. Many women devote their lives to running the home, raising the kids, and ensuring that everything goes without a hitch. They frequently do the majority of the emotional work, including remembering birthdays, organizing events, keeping up social ties, and above all, taking care of everyone else, even if they work outside the home. However, this unrelenting giving can eventually result in fatigue and worse, invisibility. Instead of being valued, their contributions are frequently required. They could start to feel like they are only there to fulfill a duty and that their efforts are not valued. It's a subtle yet profoundly felt fatigue. It can undermine their self-esteem and make them wonder if their efforts are really worthwhile. It can seem like a never-ending battle to strike a balance between one's own needs and those of being a spouse and parent. Deep emotional scarring may result from a disturbance in this delicate dance. Resentment invariably starts to grow when both couples are overburdened with obligations but do not recognize or fully value the hardship that each of them bears. This emotional neglect has the potential to gradually erode their relationship's basis over time. The husband, who puts in a lot of work every day, starts to feel like he is just a cog in the wheel of everyday life and that his efforts are not valued. He can feel extremely alone and frustrated, believing that he will never receive the appreciation and acknowledgement he so well deserves. In the meantime, the wife who sacrifices so much for her family may begin to feel invisible, as if her job as the caregiver and emotional support is taken for granted. She is emotionally spent, emotionally starving for recognition, and feels completely alone in her endeavors because she feels the weight of her sacrifices but believes that no one really understands them. Even when both partners are trying their hardest to keep things together, this imbalance, which is so subtle yet profoundly impactful, creates a painful gap where both feel unloved and unacknowledged. They stop feeling important in their own right, which causes them to become emotionally distant from one another, not because they don't care anymore. A terrible sense of neglect takes the place of the straightforward, daily actions of compassion and affection that once flowed readily. And in this all-seeming terrible sense of neglect takes the place of the straightforward daily actions of compassion and affection that once flowed readily. What started out as a lovely union between two people working toward a common objective, a shared partnership, starts to feel more like a contract, an unwritten, unsatisfied pact where each person's efforts are expected but rarely acknowledged. Exasperated, the husband starts to blame his wife for not appreciating the extent of his sacrifices. He believes that no one genuinely comprehends the weight he bears, and he feels isolated in his battle. In the meantime, the weary and emotionally spent wife starts to blame her husband for failing to see the emotional cost of her caregiving. She feels as like she is giving and giving without expecting anything in return, and she secretly questions whether he still views her as the passionate, lively woman he fell in love with, or if she is now just a caregiver. Neither is purposefully ignoring the other. Even though they may have a profound affection for one another, their capacity to see one another clearly is obscured by their own burdens. It is imperative that both partners stand back and actively acknowledge each other's contributions in order to avoid this devastating breakdown. They must show appreciation for the individual doing the acts, as well as for what is being done. Relationship dynamics change from resentment to a shared space of respect and understanding when both partners feel genuinely seen and valued, when their love and respect for one another as unique individuals is restored. At that point, the scars from years of unappreciated sacrifice start to heal due to the love. The ability to value one another for who they are, for their essence rather than just what they do, is the foundation of a successful partnership. It's simple to lose sight of the initial connection, the intense, passionate link that first drew two people together. As a marriage progresses, as the years go by and children arrive and depart, a marriage is full of learning in the beginning. Each partner views the other as a complete individual with potential, goals, and aspirations. The shared excitement of getting to know one another is the foundation of the deep and profound connection. The couple, however, starts to view one another more as roles than as individuals, as time passes and life demands more work, duties, and family obligations. The wife takes on the role of caregiver, while the husband becomes the provider. The formerly lively connection abruptly changes into something more transactional and structured. What used to feel like a passionate, exploratory partnership has turned into a daily to-do list. Who is in charge of paying the bills, preparing the meal, and picking up the children? The burden of regularity buried the deeper connection, the intimate emotional connection. The husband loses sight of his wife's former self as he begins to view her as the mother of their children and the caregiver of their home. He initially fell in love with her because of her beauty, humor, and intelligence. He no longer sees her as a person, but rather as a part of their home's continuous running. In a similar vein, the wife starts to view her husband solely as the one who provides for her, brings home the paycheck, and fixes damaged items. Instead than focusing on who he is, she engages with him based on his actions. And this is the location where emotional intimacy slowly perishes due to mutual neglect. If you're still watching this video and find these teachings helpful, please let me know by leaving a comment below. Despite not being deliberate, this change is quite damaging. It undermines the mutual respect and affection that once underpinned their relationship. Unaware of it, both couples start to feel unfamiliar with one another. The husband believes that his value is solely determined by his capacity to provide, while the wife believes that no one genuinely appreciates her for who she is outside of her duty as caregiver. The love that once drove them is suffocated by the demands and obligations of everyday life, and they are no longer able to view one another with new eyes. The feeling of being invisible and undervalued replaces appreciation, leaving behind an unpleasant, throbbing sensation. Love is no longer the driving force in the once beautiful relationship, which has devolved into a complex ballet of unsaid resentments. It's just a requirement. Slowing down and taking the time to see each other again, to genuinely look into each other's eyes, and to remember the love that brought you two together is crucial for this reason. Roles and expectations alone are insufficient. Your partner needs to know that you love them for who they are, not simply what they do, and that you view them as the complete person they are. Then, and only then, will you start to mend the invisible fissures that have appeared in your relationship and get back to where love is shared rather than merely expected. The waning of admiration is not achieved suddenly. Like the gradual deterioration of the basis that previously underpinned the partnership, it silently disappears. Frustration takes its place, and things that used to be small irritations seem like enormous challenges. If ignored, these minor annoyances can escalate into a more serious kind of discontent that can strain the bond and cause both parties to feel alienated. It's important to stand back at this stage and understand that a relationship is not a static thing. It's a living, breathing connection that needs ongoing care. In actuality, couples need to actively work to view one another as developing people rather than as static partners who are only playing their parts. Maintaining the status quo is not the only goal of this procedure. The goal is to grow together as you both change. It entails having deep, sincere discussions in which both partners are sincerely interested in learning about one another's ideas, goals, and changing desires. It means not only expecting the person you love to stay the same person you fell in love with, but actively supporting each other's personal development and cheering them on as they become the finest versions of themselves. The spark begins to wane when you lose interest in the person you're with and cease learning new things about them and their path. Only when both people continue to be really interested in each other's development, rather than merely what they provide to the partnership or the home, can a relationship truly flourish. It is impossible for passion, respect, and admiration to exist independently. They need work, purpose, and ongoing attention. It's quite easy to get caught up in the idea that love will take care of itself. When individuals first fall in love, this belief is a dream come true for many people, the notion that everything will happen naturally. However, as time goes on, they come to understand that enthusiasm and adoration need more than simply the initial spark. To keep the fire going, they need constant attention and work. In actuality, sustained investment is necessary for long-term relationships. However, it goes beyond simply making an investment in the relationship. It's about making an investment in your own development as well. Both parties are always working to be the greatest versions of themselves in the start of a relationship. They dress to please, have lengthy, in-depth conversations, share new experiences, and put their best selves forward. However, that early excitement may gradually give way to complacency over time. Many couples, without even realizing it, start to take each other for granted, believing that their love will sustain them without constant work. They cease pushing one another, cease developing as a team, and eventually that intense bond becomes less noticeable. When adoration begins to wane, it's one of the most agonizing facts of long-term partnerships. If a woman stops developing, changing, and working toward her own objectives, a guy who formerly found her exciting and captivating may gradually start to see her as just another aspect of everyday life. The same is true for a woman who used to respect her husband's ambition and determination. She can start to feel let down and alienated if he starts to stall, loses his drive, or gives up his passions. During these times, the partnership loses its thrill and shared dreams and starts to feel more like a burden. One significant incident isn't the cause of this decline in esteem. When both spouses cease pursuing their own development, and consequently the development of the relationship, a gradual and unnoticeable change takes place. You can no longer inspire one another when you stop trying to be the finest versions of yourselves, and the relationship's core starts to deteriorate in the absence of motivation and appreciation. Allowing outside demands, jobs, kids, money, and daily responsibilities to overshadow the relationship itself is possibly one of the most harmful errors couples make. Before you realize it, date nights turn into an uncommon luxury. Meaningful and in-depth discussions give way to administrative check-ins, and shared activities fade into the past. The relationship between partners deteriorates as the burden of tasks mounts. What was once a vibrant, blooming relationship turns into a routine, predictable, and frequently emotionally aloof one. Resentment can readily creep in when passion and admiration are no longer actively fostered. Furthermore, once it establishes itself, resentment can be one of the most damaging factors in any partnership. It's crucial to keep working at it because of this. Only when both partners are dedicated to developing as individuals and as a partnership will a relationship last. This entails never being comfortable, always pushing yourself to get better, and establishing new objectives. It also entails maintaining a feeling of adventure and curiosity, surprise one another, and doing new things together in order to keep the relationship interesting. Both you and your partner must adapt to the ever-changing nature of life. You cannot simply coexist. You must develop together if you want to prosper. Please let me know in the third remark below whether you are still watching this video and find these teachings helpful. Admiration and love are more than just one-dimensional feelings. They are dynamic, living things that flourish and change throughout time. When both partners are dedicated to developing together and consistently supporting and motivating one another, they flourish. A partnership might lose its vitality if it stagnates and settles for just existing. Love needs continual sustenance to grow, just like a garden needs water and sunlight. The partnership starts its unavoidable downfall when both partners stop changing, but two people form a link that becomes a source of passion, excitement, and fulfillment when they are constantly changing, challenging one another, encouraging growth, and supporting each other's ambitions. Couples all too frequently make the grave mistake of assuming that once love is established, it will last naturally and without much work. This misunderstanding is harmful, in addition to being false. Respect, love, and adoration are not constants. They require constant attention and work because they are delicate and dynamic. Both partners need to grow as individuals and as a pair, encouraging each other on their paths. The key to a successful partnership is this reciprocal progress. A relationship starts to wither the instant it stops developing. Just having two individuals together is insufficient. They must encourage one another to be better versions of themselves and to aim higher. Long-lasting and successful relationships are not ones in which neither partner changes. They are the ones where people push each other to be their best selves by challenging one another. Assuming that their love would continue to grow organically over time is one of the biggest misconceptions couples make. We frequently believe that everything else will work itself out once we've discovered our soul partner. But there is a problem with this belief. Deliberate deeds, not just being there, are the foundation of true admiration. Respect and admiration increase when one spouse observes the other working toward personal development, whether it is by taking care of their physical and emotional well-being, pursuing passions, or learning new skills. It turns into a loop. The more we observe our partner developing, the more motivated we are to follow suit. We respect and appreciate them for their dedication to being the best versions of themselves, not for their flawlessness. Deeper respect, a closer emotional bond, and eventually a more satisfying partnership are all facilitated by this development. A man will inevitably become a source of admiration for his wife if he constantly challenges himself, sets objectives, and grows. The same is true for a woman who is committed to developing herself, following her goals, and taking care of her health. This commitment not only fosters mutual respect, but also fortifies the basis of their partnership. However, the fissures start to show when both spouses become complacent, when personal goals diminish, and when self-improvement becomes less important. What was once exciting turns into a stale habit, conversations get boring, and mutual curiosity about life wanes. At that point, irritation begins to seep in, and the spark begins to dim. A marriage may become less meaningful at these times. Once a passionate partnership, it becomes a routine that is predictable and uninteresting. Partners begin to perceive each other through the prism of familiarity and lose sight of the wonder that exists within them. Yes, comfort, but also emotional detachment. Without motivation, a relationship devolves into a sequence of actions, where each day gets monotonous until eventually a sense of longing begins to seep in. But mutual inspiration isn't about rivalry. Being superior to one partner is not the point. It's about supporting one another to step up, overcome obstacles, and create something bigger together. Mutual inspiration is the foundation of a relationship that remains alive, dynamic, and full of potential. It goes beyond simply being in love. It's about developing together. And as you both grow, the love also does. I want you to think back on everything we've discussed about preserving respect and connection in relationships as we get to the end of our conversation today. Although it's not always simple, we can maintain the health of our relationships by making an effort and growing consciously. So far, what have you discovered? Which important lesson will you apply to your own life as a result of watching this video? I would love to know what you think. Please leave a comment below with one relationship goal you're determined to work toward. Additionally, if you liked this video, please remember to leave a comment below. For more videos like this, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your assistance is greatly appreciated, and we look forward to continuing our growth and relationship with you.